are in listen-only mode.
This is the result of high tech, the consequences of high tech. We have people watching this presentation within this auditorium, and also about 30 people outside from all over the world. Before we proceed with the presentation, I would like to make a pleasant announcement. Thanks to Mr. Spiros Polemis of Polembros, we are not going to have entrance fees for both members and non-members starting this September. Mr. Polemis will sponsor SNAME and will cover the cost of catering. Thanks to the efforts of our colleague Kostas Maounis, we managed to enroll his support, and we really appreciate it. We are going to show our appreciation, and it is really significant because even this small amount might mean a lot to some of our colleagues. So no more after September. And then hopefully his example will be followed by the same or maybe others. Now, without further ado, I would like to present the speaker of today's presentation. Mr. Zachariadis is one of the crusaders in the fight for better, safer, and more robust rules. As I told him earlier, I would like to endorse his presentation prior to giving it. His presentation tonight is related to the harmonized structural rules, common structural rules, and goal-based standards. Goal-based standards, as you know, are rules on how to make rules. There are specific guidelines. Question mark, the recently unveiled harmonized structural rules, do they comply with these guidelines, with GBS? Not according to the auditing committee. There are a lot of non-conformities which will be analyzed and presented by Panos Zachariadis. Panos is an old colleague from the University of Michigan. He always likes to ask me hot potato questions, and today I hope I take my blood back. Although I endorse his speech, I will ask questions. Panos.
Thank you, Yannick. It's dangerous to endorse my presentations before having seen them. Because sometimes
I think that people up there maybe cannot hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me? So I said it's dangerous to endorse my presentations before having seen them because many times they are controversial. But I don't think this one is so much.
But it's contained in the Greek submission to IMO.
Yes, yes. Okay. So, it was working before, now it doesn't.
Non-conformity.
It's like your input.
Non-conformity number one.
I
don't know what's going on next. So, yeah. Do by mouth. So let's start. some questions. Who do you think suggested first common structural rules? Net scattering approach, 25-year design life, 15 years coating life for coatings, or goal-based standards? The answer may surprise a few people. Even common structural rules were suggested by Greece. So a short history on goal-based standards and how they started. Most people say it started with the submission of Greece and Bahamas, but there is some prior history. The reason that they started is because of deteriorating construction standards, classes competing on scantlings, which classes have admitted it. They have accepted that this was a problem. Dissatisfaction with quality of construction, and there was the double hull bulk carriers debate, which at the same time there were some assessments made that double hull bulk carriers may be safer than single hull bulk carriers. And of course the Greek reaction was, this is not so. The problem is the rules and the quality of construction. So that played into the startup of goal-based standards. So this is the paper that actually started everything. This is a paper by Greece titled Building of Robust Ships. And in there it says, presents the view that IMO should ensure the building of robust bulk carriers and tankers and suggest actions to pursue. Among the actions it suggested, well, it mentions that the IMO regulates everything that has to do with the operation of the ship, but it doesn't regulate anything or doesn't really care about the design and construction of ships. It has some pretty harsh words. The classification society, although chosen by the owner, is paid by the shipyard, and this poses a situation of potential conflict of interest. Competition for new building orders makes it imperative to have unified standards on all aspects of ship design and construction. So this is the first motion for common rules. The general trend in shipbuilding is optimization, which really means minimization, and that was a submission to MSC, the Maritime Safety Committee, the one before. The Maritime Safety Committee replied that this is, IMO doesn't deal with construction standards. This is the prerogative of administrations and classification societies. But at that time, Greece found an ally, Bahamas, and together now they made a submission to the Council of IMO, which is the ruling body, suggesting that IMO, it's about time that IMO should play a role in the construction and design of ships. And in that submission to the Council of IMO, it suggests which areas IMO should specify for the construction of ships and get involved in. It suggests that IAC should develop and implement unified standards. Coating standards should have a 15-year expected life. This is long before PSPC. And that suitable corrosion margins should be expressed in millimeters rather than percentages, the net scattering approach. The design life should be 25 years. Owners should be granted access to technical exchange between shipyards and classification societies. Of course, the Council finally agreed to it and sent it back to MSC, and they said, yes, we agree to it. IMO should be involved in the construction of ships and the routes, and therefore back to MSC, so MSC can now fix the details of this new item. And of course, like I say, if you can't give them, join them. Ajax came along. Of course, Ajax, for something like that, whether you like it or not, you need Ajax. You need the expertise of Ajax if you're going to make the rules for rules. And of course, Ajax also liked it to be involved, so they can influence the outcome. So the attitude until that point was, don't get involved in our regulations. Tell us what you want to do, tell us what your goal is, and let us do it because we know best. Well, now IMO gets involved. And in that proposal, this is the familiar goal-based standards 5-tier diagram. The first 3 tiers are the prerogative of IMO. Tier 4 is the actual rules of classification of societies. Tier 5 is non-mandatory guidelines and so on. So MSC obviously develops a working group and sends the issue to the working group to deal with the details. And soon the first problem started. Greece, Bahamas, and the ship operators in general seem to have in mind, from the goal-based standards, they had in mind the standards part of the world. They wanted prescriptive, strict regulations. Shipyards, the European shipyards who deal with cruise ships and they like flexibility, innovation, and so on. Ajax and Safeguard, which was a big consortium of European countries dealing with risk issues and risk design, they had mostly in mind the goal of the phrase. In other words, that goal-based standards should be based on safety level approach. FSA's formal safety assessment. So this debate went on for 2 years, and IMO was pretty much stuck until finally it was decided that both will proceed, both the risk-based approach and Greece's prescriptive approach. The prescriptive approach will be applicable only to tankers and bulk carriers for the time being. And of course, the safety level approach needed a lot more time in order to be finalized. So it was something for the future anyways. Now, on the prescriptive approach, soon enough, 2 versions of Tier 2, of functional requirements that need to be complied by the rules, were created. One was the Greek version, the other one was the Japanese version. Now, as we understand, the Greek version was very prescriptive, very strict. We try to include everything that we need the rules should comply with. The Japanese version was milder. Obviously, they wanted less regulation, the more flexibility for them. So that took up another good 1.5 years or maybe more until somebody had an idea to convince Spain to produce a compromised version. Now, Spain produced a compromised version of Tier 2, and I think this had a big role to play because then Spain, because of the prestige, in a way was for stricter rules. So the end result, I can say I liked, because the Spanish version was much closer to the Greek version than the Japanese version. Now, whenever there is an impasse in IMO and somebody says compromise, then all the neutrals who are not following closely what's going on, then they say, okay, good, compromise, I'll vote for the compromise. So that took the neutral member states in. Ajax are asked to complete CSR, maybe in a hurry. The different CSR, the CSR for tankers and bulk carriers. The reason I think it's my personal estimation was to have CSR finished before goal-based standards were finished, so less chance for goal-based standards to influence the common structural rules, and also good chance for common structural rules to influence the outcome of goal-based standards. Of course, the risk-based countries, let's put it this way, they weren't sure that goal-based standards is following the correct, the appropriate path, and they were always producing delays. One of them was we need a big pilot project to test the whole thing. So again, that took 2 years. Experts nominated by member countries were chosen for the pilot project, and they met together with Ajax to make sure that everything is going to be working in reality okay. So the pilot project finally, when it was finished, I can say that it actually enhanced the core-based standards work. Now, as I said, we have 3 tiers. Tier 4 is the rules. Of course, the goals is basically a goal statement. Ships will be safe at all times. The functional requirements is what needs to be complied with in order to achieve the goals. But for me, the heart of core-based standards is the verification of conformity, because in there you have all the details of what exactly the rules should include in order to comply with Tier 2 and Tier 1. This is the functional requirements finally that were set up for Tier 2, 15 functional requirements. Design life, what the design life of the ship should be, what environmental conditions should be used for the design, and so on. Let's take an example of structural strength. This is the actual text of Tier 2 for structural strength, the general paragraph, and then it goes on to say that the structural strength shall be assessed against excessive deflection and failure modes, including buckling, yielding, and fatigue, and it should take into account ultimate strength, and it should have sufficient safety margins. That's all there is to it as far as structural strength for Tier 2. The verification, however, part, the Tier 3, is much more detailed. It requests from the authors of the rules to produce to the auditors of IMO so they can verify whether the rules comply with the standards 2 things: documents and information and evaluation criteria. The documents look something like this: information and documentation requirements. Give us the description of how you do the strength assessment. Give us an explanation of the net standing concept you are using. Give us justification of the methodologies you use to obtain the global logs and all that. So this is information that the auditors request from the classification rules. Once they get that, this, by the way, 25 such items are required in Tier 3 only for the structural strength. Once they get the information, then Tier 3 guides the auditors on how to do the audit. And it tells them, you have to ask yourself the following questions. If the answer is yes, it's okay. If the answer is no, it's a problem. So, for the structural strength, do the rules specify the probability of exceedance for which global and local dynamic loads are calculated? Are the limits of yielding and so on set at levels that will maintain the structural integrity? Do the rules sufficiently contain informations and so on? Questions for the auditors to answer during the audit. 23 specific and detailed questions for the structural strength. Now, you can imagine, you said before, this is one item. We have 15 Tier 2 functional requirements. Each one of them, this is just an example I'm giving for structural strength. Each one of them has such detailed requirements for information to be provided and documentation and specific evaluation criteria. So, some familiar questions, questions that I picked up as examples that are included in the evaluation criteria of Tier 3. Does the wave data properly represent North Atlantic? Do the rules satisfactorily consider deformations? What is the extent of finite element models? You see how detailed are the questions. Are the following loading conditions included? Homogeneous, partial, alternate, multi-port, ballast, ballast management, loading and offloading sequences, and intermediate conditions. All those are requirements for the rules to include and comply. Weld considerations, tapering, transitions, deformation, vibrations. Do the rules include adequate safety factors? If you use stress concentration factors, how did you come up with them? Okay, I'll go a little fast, but you can see the level of detail what tier 3 goes into. And of course, most of these were developed during the pilot project, and there were some people, I didn't take part, but there were some people, Team Cerebral, everybody, you know, was part of the pilot group, Mr. Andreopoulos from the UGS, and they did, and other experts from classification societies. I mean, actually not from classification societies. Classification societies were on the other part, professors from universities and all that. And they did a real good job in actually coming up with good criteria for rules. So that was the goal-based standards part. This is what the goal-based standards are. And now we go into the common structural rules. This is the latest version, harmonized for tankers and bulk carriers. This is the rules that I submitted to IMO so they can go through the audit to decide whether the rules comply with all the standards or not. The rule, of course, is thousands of pages if you include the URs and the UIs and all that. And this is the first page of the rules. The first page of the rules has a disclaimer and says, Ajax members assume no responsibility and shall not be liable for anything arising from the use of this information. For the avoidance of any doubt, this document and the material contained in it are provided as information only and not as advice to be relied upon by any person. Now, this is on the rule book. Now, on the Ajax side, it's a little different. It says, unless that person has signed a contract with the relevant Ajax member, and then the liability would be as per terms of that contract. Now, of course, owners don't sign contracts for the construction of the ship. Shipyards do. I don't know if shipyards involve any responsibility. I would doubt it. But this is an issue that never stood well with me. You give rules, you build ships, and then you have this kind of disclaimers. So Ajax submitted two big packages, Common Package 1 and Common Package 2, which one is the CSR harmonized rules, and the other one is all the related documents that Ajax uses in conjunction with the rules, unified requirements, procedural requirements, unified interpretations, etc. And also every classification society has its own rules that are not already covered by the other two documents. And all that was submitted to IMO for audit. And IMO produced 5 teams of auditors, 17 auditors in total. But the bulk of the work, of course, was Team 1 and Team 5. Those were the 2 teams that actually checked the common structural rules, the harmonized version. The Team 2, 3, and 4 checked only the individual rules. In other words, the areas in each member of Ajax rule that is not already included in the common packages. This is a summary of the result of the audit. As you can see, not conforming was environmental conditions, structural strength, fatigue life, because except for many observations that were produced by the auditors, for these areas there were also non-conformities, clear non-conformities. Also design transparency was a problem, and survey construction was a problem. And we'll go into more detail into that. That's an example of how the findings by the auditors look like. This is the first non-conformity, it has to do with IAX recommendation 34, which is the North Atlantic weight data that IAX uses for the design of ships. In there, IAX assumes equal heading probability for the ships, no matter what the weather and the waves. And of course, this was found to be a non-conformity because, as we know, the masters head seas always should have higher probability of occurrence because the masters, even in bad weather, they prefer to have the bad weather at the bottom. So this is the conclusion from the auditors. Evidence was found showing that heading distribution adapted by for the assessment of ship motions and loads is not based on the headings expected, and in addition, is not conservative. To these findings, IAX makes a response by proposing corrective actions. This is how it looks in this specific case. IAX says, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in order to comply with this non-conformity. The IAX document, as a response to the auditor's findings, it's over 100 pages. I want to give you now some example audit comments. Observation. Sufficient justification for the net scattering approach has not been found. In other words, how did you come up with a 50% corrosion addition to the net scatterings? The audit has not found sufficient justification that the weight data used in the rules properly represent North Atlantic. We all know it's all data. There is a lot of new studies saying it's more severe and all that. Different scantlings will be produced by the same rules. This is something, of course, we've been saying a long time ago, and that's because of the software. If you don't have common software, you're not going to get the same scantlings. Notice that so far all these are simple observations. Okay? They are not non-conformities, but to me, most of the observations were actually non-conformities. Not possible to verify that the limits of yielding, buckling, and all that are set at appropriate levels. The technical background offers no explanation as to why partial penetration welding may suffice in these critical areas. Something that we've been saying also the UTS time and time again. This is a non-conformity. The rules, there's no evidence to conclude that the rules include adequate safety factors. Sounds serious, I guess. That's another little embarrassing statement, I would think, for IAX. It says, unlike pre-CSR rules, in other words, the pre-CSR rules have it, requirements for structural continuity are in these rules high level rule-based statements and cannot be considered as meeting the criteria. In other words, clearly the auditors think this is a downgrade of these rules. As far as the safety margins, on many times IAX has claimed that designing for North Atlantic conditions is safety margin enough, because not all ships, and mostly existing ships, they don't always operate in North Atlantic. And of course, this is something that I don't agree with, and the auditors don't agree with. Gold-based standard says we design for North Atlantic, period, and also they make ships that are always operating in North Atlantic, so they have to be safe too. The assumed loading conditions, this is for fatigue, appear unrepresentative. IAX assumed that the ship is loaded 70% of the time, 15% of the time is in heavy ballast condition, and 15% of the time is in light ballast condition. And of course, the author said the North Atlantic will never operate in light ballast condition. So heavy ballast being, as John Botarakis well knows, the most punitive fatigue condition, it was pretty much reduced by considering that half of the time in ballast condition would be like ballast provision. And that's a non-conformity, by the way. The consequence of failure of a particular member has not been considered to the fatigue calculation. Non-conformity, no justification with regard to the rule assumptions for protecting the environment. This is again for fatigue. In fatigue assessment, IACS and the rules assume that the steel is protected for 20 to 23 years. In other words, it remains stored. And we're talking about welds and all that. As you understand, without maintenance and repairs, this is not possible. And if you're talking, we're talking also about void spaces where PSPC is not valid to begin with. So this is clearly a non-conformity and an unrealistic assumption that, according to the auditor, needs to be revised. Post-weld treatment, another hot potato. If you do grinding, you can reduce the required fatigue of a detail. In other words, you can assume that 17 years of fatigue is equivalent to 25 years as the rule requires if you do grinding. And of course, again, this may be inside tanks, inside void spaces, and so on. And we know the reality of ships, this is not really possible. So the auditors ask that this is taken back. Corrosion additions, my favorite subject. Practically, the auditors, they question the whole methodology about Ajax method of producing the corrosion additions. They say insufficient justification for the volume of data, criteria used, the probabilistic model, cumulative probability, and so on. Not enough evidence that alternative methods to the rule are assessed properly. And finally, another hot issue lately, URS 14, this is the testing of tanks of watertight spaces. IDEX was using a version of URS 14 that's not in accordance with SORAS. And here, the auditors reprimand IDEX saying you should never use anything lower than SORAS in your rules. So far we have the audit report, the reply by IDEX on how they plan on their corrective actions, how they plan to proceed. And only Greece submitted some comments to this MSC that's coming up in May about saying in general that we agree in general with IDEX proposed action plan, except for a few areas that we don't agree, and IDEX should do it differently. This is a tabulation of really what Greece is commenting on. I don't know how much time we should spend. Let me see. Let's take the first example that we discussed, the heading. The auditors say change the heading probability and make it so that head seas have higher probability than anything else in your assessment. In their corrective actions that IDEX admitted to IMO, it seems that they propose to revise the whole method, not just the heading probability. So the Greek comment was, don't really address the whole method. Just change the heading probability and nothing else. Because by redoing the whole method, then you can change the heading probability, but then you can change other things, so we don't know the net result. So I'm sure you can see this later. The fatigue that we discussed before on the protective coated environment. And now we move to observations, full of partial penetration. No margin of fatigue assessment, and so on. If you want to revisit those in more detail, we can discuss it later. In some areas, Greece did not agree with Ajax because of some good reason. For example, let's take the 17, fatigue ready for grinding. If the shipyard does grinding, then they can satisfy only 17 days of life for the detail. But this detail has to remain protected, coated for the life of the ship. So the auditor says, this is an unrealistic assumption, take it back. In other words, require 25 years of fatigue for all details. In their corrective actions, Ajax says, we will develop an inspection procedure for the ships in service. In other words, it seems to me, pass the buck to the operator. Instead of saying, forget about this relaxation in the construction rules, we'll keep it, and then we'll demand from the owner that every month or every 6 months, he goes into the workspaces and the ballast tanks to make sure that the welds are in code. Of course, as you understand, this is not feasible, and of course, it's unacceptable. So those were the interventions that are included in the Greek submission now to IMO. And hopefully there will be agreement not only by the other member states, but also by Ajax to fix those things. Some conclusions. A lot of serious work has been done on goal-based standards to become a real good tool for the assessment of rules. The auditors did a very good job. They went deeply into the rules. So, to me, the majority of the observations are actually non-conformities. In other words, you have the verification criterion that's not satisfied, clearly not satisfied, but then you only make an observation and not a non-conformity. But in any case, if all non-conformities and observations are properly addressed, the rules will be greatly improved. But of course, there are still quite a few things to fix in the rules. We should continue the effort. Some of those things, perhaps, I don't like the fact that you can omit very fine mesh analysis if you use specific design details, because they are not prescriptive enough. It doesn't give the minimum thicknesses. Welding still needs work. Stop the interpretation of CSR by Ajax members. Now, I have seen this before. I've seen a classification society that comes up with a paper and says, our interpretation of CSR is so and so. That shouldn't happen. Unilateral members, SOLAS equivalencies. One example, one called PSPC. This shouldn't exist.
But they do it.
They do it, yeah, but it's not legal. Double bottom height and spacing of floors needs work. Ajax Knowledge Center needs to be monitored. I think Ajax understands the problem we had before, that some of the answers in the Knowledge Center were actually rule changes. So I think now there's better control. Weeping, QRS 11, there are studies, notably I would say by DNV, that weeping and spinning contributes an order of magnitude to the fatigue of bulk carriers and tankers. And yet, the issue, I have the paper line. I'll send it to you.
Only the big guys.
Huh?
Only the big guys, zero space. Long vessels, long high-length vessels.
Okay.
Over
I don't remember if it was for bulk carriers and tankers that paper specifically, but I don't remember how
I
big.
appreciate it. You give me a call.
Yeah. Of course, stay on the lookout for possible future relaxation. Shipyards are the instigators of this. They say this is not required, this is not needed, and so on. And before you know it, there is changes in the rules. Castings and type approval certificates, big issue. And of course, longer term, We need to keep an eye on the safety level approach because it has the potential of throwing every prescriptive item in the rules into the garbage bin. So we need to go carefully into the safety level approach. So what's the reason for all this? The reason is to avoid this kind of situations. This is from the construction, and you see you have a big gap. The shipyard put a piece of steel.
No, they don't do that in the shipyard.
They started welding over it. Some nice pictures for you. Misalignment of blocks. If not seen by somebody, they would weld it like this. Okay, this is funny. Because of the way they supported the block, there is deformation, so they went and welded all the other pieces on the form plate.
Ah, yes. Yeah, that was nice.
Joseph?
It could be, but it was
This is on the side shot. Now, there is a huge gap, and they put a piece of
wire.
Another, you can see a small piece of metal in the gap over there, trying to weld over it.
That's ingenuity.
And this is what I call ergonomics. Because of high inclination, this is how they.
Yeah, they didn't fix the floor. That's fine.
That's it. Thank you.
Now we will start the interesting question and answer session. We happen to have here one of the world experts in safety level assessment, Professor Pavanopoulos. He will want to defend
That's another question.
yeah.
Now, but where are we going to?
Okay, if I may say something, first congratulations, excellent presentation about the background of GPS, and I don't like to comment on what will be in the future, but on the other side, I'd like to say that now with all this work, there are very specific requirements in the rules, and I have the impression, because I'm not representing now class societies, but if you specify something, then at first you need to be sure that you can achieve that. So before making specifications, before making rules, you need to check whether what you prescribe is feasible. And I have the feeling in many details. I mean, it is excellent work that you have done. But I think that in practice, many of these problems have been not solved yet scientifically, and the class societies are lagging behind. But it is good to admit that. And finally, ultimately, the yard is going to beat. And your problem is actually the big ship, finally, because you are going to operate that. The class societies are in between. You like them to ensure that the ship is properly built, but actually the yard is doing the job. And I mean, all these pictures, the funny pictures that I'm sure it, I mean, I didn't say where the ships were built, and we don't like to be racist, but it is clear. Ultimately, you get what you pay. There are good yards, there are not good yards, and maybe you may have very good engineers, your company, that can teach also some shipyards how to build ships, and you get also good results. But what I like to say, as I said, GPS and the whole work and initiative, excellent, because now you have a Bible, but I have the feeling in many respects this is something that is, for a class society, very difficult to achieve. And
I would corroborate one of the comments.
Yeah.
To punish, but
First, Professor.
Let me make a comment before I go over, because I agree with what you said. These goal-based standards are specific to tankers and bulk carriers and nothing else. Okay? Because for cruise ships, for other ships that you need orientation,
Ships.
even container ships, okay.
We're getting new rules now.
These things have come mostly from experience into the tankers and bulk carriers through so many years of rulemaking and seeing the defects and fixing them that it wouldn't be good to lose them because of the safety level approach. But for other ships, the safety level approach is more appropriate. Once it's completed, because it's not there yet, you cannot really design a ship simply on the safety level approach. So this was specific to tankers and bulk carriers. We can understand that more and more the safety level approach will encompass everything. But slowly and carefully, and benchmarking against experience.
Yes.
So, okay, so that's my comment.
And for the other ships, I mean, as you said, I think container ships, I mean, you have this, there are a lot of things equally there.
Yeah.
I mean, this mold ship, okay, everybody knows that it was.
I will address this.
Okay, and if something like that happened, I mean, some respected class society was classifying that was a new build ship, 5 years old. So that means
yes,
something,
let me help you.
and also a shipyard, a non-shipyard. So then, what is the problem here?
Let me help you on that. Let me help you with that. Because a lot of people do not take into account that when you are supervising a ship, you do encounter things that we saw before in your presentation, and I congratulate you for your presentation. Everything is excellent. The fact is that we have two issues in the shipyard. One is, what does the class society doing for things like this that we show? A lot of people in the shipyard of representing the class society do not know what they are looking at. Many of them have not been trained properly, especially during the years between 2005 and 2008, where a lot of project managers and supervisors from the classification society were coming to the shipyard, but they had no knowledge how the ship should be constructed.
I can tell you that the auditors picked this up. That's why the construction part, the functional requirement, they gave number 40.
Yes.
For example, the procedural requirement 03 of IMEX said, fit-up inspection, the surveyor doesn't have to attend.
Okay,
You can do it
I'm
by
coming to that
control.
one. Yes, I'm coming to that because
and then
we have
the other
fights.
issue on the number and qualification of surveyors, number and qualification of surveyors, they're also made on surveyors. You don't have clear requirements for the number of surveyors for the project and the qualification of the surveyors.
So what are they going to do about this?
So now it's an official comment by IMO.
But what are they going to do about it?
They have to do something.
But still we will have
Because this will be ongoing now.
still we will have non-conformity, even to today. It's
Unless
been going on for years.
now they're required to fix those comments, even the observation, they're required to address in the next 2 or 3 years. There will be a verification, continuation verification. The auditors then will look into all those comments. Did you fix that? Did you fix that? So they have to fix it.
Can you tell us what have they done with the affiliation that normally goes between the shipyard and the classification society? Because the classification societies, what role do they play? Are they going, as you mentioned, that they're getting paid by the shipyard? So what is going to do? What are they going to do now?
The biggest advance was the common rules. Now they have common rules, and now they have IMO telling them a few things that they even have to fix on those common rules. Things they can't compete on standards.
The class
They
between
cannot
themselves.
say yes.
Yes, but how about the shipyard? What do they?
Well,
What does it say that the shipyard, will the shipyard still be controlling the classification society by telling them, I pay you for it?
What is the question?
That's it. That's a question. That's a question.
Yes. Did you share?
I don't think the shipyard controls the classification society to any great extent nowadays. I think it has improved tremendously. And then the owner is there also for those kind of things. And the owner needs to be educated. If he is educated, he doesn't let the shipyard
I don't.
take advantage.
We cannot allow that in the past on the
I'm sorry.
I cannot allow that. So, other questions? Not comments, questions. Do we have other questions? Many people here. You don't have other questions? Questions?
Thank you very much for the excellent presentation. What I wanted to ask is, do you have anything in mind why IX has chosen sort of a middle way? Obviously, they know what should be there instead of having so many observations. Why did they choose how to say, an option closer to the shipyard view of things? For example, for the welding.
The first submission of this back in 2002, we said the yards are the first customer of the shipyard. Not only that, they have huge design departments. They don't do anything all day. They make comments to the rules. They analyze the rules to break, extend, and all that. So they have a lot of technical influence on items. Up to now, the golden standard was made so it can bring some kind of equilibrium to that influence by the shipyards on the rules. So now you have the IMO instructions to others. And there will be continuous oversight for the rules by IMO.
I would like to make a point to corroborate Professor Papadopoulos' comment. And it is a question, for example, buckling assessment. In the first CSR, the non-harmonized ones, different rules for the battalion, different for the task. The PULSE program was produced, actually, it's a brilliant program, by the way, was produced by DNV and was followed by LAM, Lloyd's, ABS, DNV. In the second run, and sometime in the procedure, like correctly pointed by you, what we see is like changes in the rules out of the blue in the process. This is terrible. PULSE is replaced for some societies with, believe it or not, with a PV buckling assessment. Now, what's the difference? PULSE is a very difficult non-linear buckling assessment, post-buckling methods, and the other is a closed-form solution. Now, which one of the two you think is going to give the most conservative values? Of course, the single. So today, we have excluded PULSE. PULSE cannot be used in the harmonized, and we're going to use the PV closed-form solution, which in my opinion is going backwards. Because with the PV solution, it is something fast, we do it, and we get more their way. I mean, we get more states. It's going to be tremendous. I know it's tremendous differences. What is your opinion on that? What would you do? I do not see a non-conformity there. It should have been. Yes. Why PULSE was abolished?
Because PULSE, criticizing PULSE, a lot of people said it's a black box. So a black box that you put something in and you get something out and you don't understand how it works.
I tried many times, Pam. I tried many times to understand the code. I could not. But
okay, so it is a black box.
Well, but it is a box. It is a black box which gives the correct result.
Are you sure about the correct? Because I know when I build services using PULSE and I redo the analysis, I need some constant stamps here.
Especially with the post-buckling nonlinear analysis, probably could say. So I'm concerned because you will see in the future when you see tankers and bulk carriers, much heavy. And then what they are going to do, don't say what you think. So what will happen, they are going to take weight out from other areas that are actually needed. So not every time there is a problem.
The guidance assessments on the CSR areas, they don't show much variations. So why do you expect much variations? And of course, I would say I've heard this before, and it didn't come out to be true, because shipyards are experts at optimization.
I took
My
my company did a study.
Because I wanted to add something here. That is, I used also to say my students because they have data about this. Tankers, the same, but we know also this. Tankers designed in the 70s and tankers designed in the 80s and 90s. Despite the double hull concept that was introduced, they are now like shippings reduced. Okay? How could that happen? No? And now, despite CSR, still they are in light ship is lower than in the 70s. Of course, also the lifespan of the ship was at that time maybe 30 years, maybe 40, and today it is marginally 20. It is a concept. Okay.
How high tensile?
Yeah, all this. So if you specify now and make, you like to have an expectancy of 25 years, it is clear that you need more speed, right? By that. And how to achieve that? I mean, how the class societies develop rules that are going to lead to this still weight, it is a question. No? But something that we need to distinguish here, and it is something in all this observation, is on one side the rules, because GPS on the rules, and the second thing is how you apply the rules in practice, how you construct it. So two different ways.
The industry actually is self-correcting, like we discussed before, in the 17 years fatigue life. There is Total says if you don't have 25 years without grinding, we are not going to charter this. So it's self-correcting. But a simple question. What is the density of charcoal for an oil tanker? What do you think it is?
I don't know.
Varies.
I don't know.
What you should take according to the rules. In my life,
Changes according to the rules.
every time it changes. I thought it would be 1.425.
I don't know what's the latest. What's the latest?
0.9. And now the yards, sure enough, they take the 0.9. It creates tremendous confusion. Unacceptable. Unacceptable.
Who has asked for this?
Yeah, the yards.
Exactly. That's why that was my question. How do you
Why do you
differentiate?
attack the class?
How can I attack the class? I attacked when I was there. And it was your guy that said, yes, we are for the owner, we're not for the shipyard. He called the shipyards and he did the project managers of PV, and he told them, you're not working for the shipyards, you're working for the owner. That was Mr. Gutierrez. Okay, and we're talking about difficult shipyards at the time where the shipyards were really hitting the owners. Okay, so how do we, when we sign a contract, we tell them you're going to design according to what? That the shipyard, that the classification society will take the side of the owner and the good ship.
It's part of so prior to that, you ensure we have good rules, and then you say to the surveyor, apply the rule.
Yeah, that's okay. But the thing is, how? When you're designing the ship and the shipyard is dictating the design, they knock the door.
I think what Mr. Petakatos is saying is true, in the sense that sometimes you see in, okay, I will not say who the designer is, but you see within two subsequent web frames, the double bottom, you see 4 different materials, grades, AH36, AH32, mild steel, and DH32.
How does this indicate who the shipyard is influencing the class?
No, I'm saying, what I'm saying is, just
The
a minute,
designer,
just a
not the
minute, let me finish. Then, but this design theoretically can be executed. Practically, who will be the foreman who distinguishes the steel grade, since every shipyard in the country we know has 3 colors for the different grades. And nobody can compete.
A very quick classification society, it is not present in this one, has said that grade A8 and grade D8 is the same. I rest my case.
My opinion as an engineer, I agree with you. In actual fact, in the papers, it's different.
So
And you have to follow the paper.
Put people like Harry to be there with their people, their team, and ensure that when it says D8, it's going to be D8.
I was there also, you know very well.
Actually, the proper thing to do on this example is at plan approval stage. You say to the shipyard, no, this is not acceptable. It's within the same.
That's where it starts.
So,
I agree with you, but if I say my reply, Gadget will be happy. So I will not.
Okay, do we have a last? Yes.
Yes. Professor Nicolau made a very serious point. I want to highlight is that actually CPR is the best. Roads are good. Plan approval is good. Class society is good. But there are CPRs that they have quality control, which actually they don't have because of the excessive subcontract. When we say quality control, means that when you see a defect, CPRs knows who is the welder who did this. You take it out of the building line, train again, and they reach package. Actually, in one country, I haven't seen this even in big cities. And I believe that this has to be a serious IX assessment, which can improve the shipyard who builds actually the vessel. Is there any non-conformity or observation on this part? On the quality control of the shipyard. Shipyard has quality control and quality assurance. And all of the classes give certificate to the shipyard that this shipyard can build the vessel.
So this falls, I mean, we have to let something to be classes developed. They give the approval to the shipyard. And we don't want
They give them the ISO, they approve the ISO, etc. Yes.
we don't need regulations. It's, they have,
And if you find that they don't, you call for vertical audit from the classification society that has given the ISO.
It is very useful. It is very
Yes,
useful.
so
Actually, I'll tell you an example. It was one shipyard, and we asked to check 16 crosses in an area with X-rays. So shipyard gave us some X-rays, which was actually almost the same with another ship. And we bring someone from outside to check. So he checked 10, and he found A, which was not. And the country manager of the class, the president of CPR, was in a meeting, and actually the problem of the president, it was not check more. So and he was stressing very much the class society. So for me, the quality control of the CPR is very critical.
and I think, Panos, for us, assessing that as well. We mentioned it before.
No,
You mentioned about this check the quality.
the GPS goes into
Exactly.
quality construction. So it doesn't go into the way classes certify.
No, they cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the special in every case anyway.
I have an answer. An answer or a question? Because most probably we're talking about science. Please speak up because we can't hear you.
Yes, that's,
Okay, I have been since in this area. I need to go down 5 years since I have made my own statistics on the quality of the research. 2000 my statistics shows that the previous 6 were better. Without the rules of experience, the 6 were designed and supervised by a chief engineer and by a company. The labor architects and the engineers were doing only the paperwork, the calculations. So I also don't trust too much from my experience, life experience, I don't trust the calculations too much. Why? Because, for example, the forecast cover for the roads. The experience in Japan.
That's outfitting, that's not
The
simple thing.
calculations were very good, but I can destroy the cover by my hand. You understand? And then they cut the whole hatch and they put bolts on the hatch cover. And the previous version was different. They will stand to the reach. And to my experience, no one seen myself will stand to the reach.
let's
Also outside of what is we have CCS, we have white list of shipyards. But often the owners found a good field and they didn't use it. What we can say. Also important, I think the owner together with
Should we discuss about it more?
because
Mr. Malagas wants to, prior to the end ceremony, will ask Mr. Malagas to announce the results of the election.
okay,
We have any questions in the audience that doesn't know any Greek? Should I speak in English or Greek? Speak in English. In English? Okay. Okay. The elections for the new executive committee and the audit committee for the next 2 years would be as follows. They voted 34 persons, 34 members, which was a better number than in previous years, I must say. although we're currently something like 180 members, regular members, we don't count the students don't vote. So we had 34 people who voted, and the results are as follows. The first person with 24 votes is Mr. Kostas Mounis. Kostas. The second is John Kokarakis with 23 votes. Third person is Professor Iridis with 16 points. He's abroad in Brussels, I understand, so he couldn't be here. The fourth person is Mr. Kostaras. Mr. Kostaras not with us. And we had two had the same number of votes, 10 votes. It's Professor Kaksis and Nikos Dionysopoulos. So we have to ask them who wants to stay on the board, and the other one will be a substitute member. Then the next one was Mr. Urtulis with 8 votes. Mr. Tsetsetalidis with 6 votes. number 9, we had the same number of votes with Mr. Mitru and Mr. Petrakakos. Each received 5 votes. And Mrs. Pavlopoulou received 4 votes. All the 3 members of the audit committee are actually voted. We don't have any more candidates. We needed 3 people, and we only have 3. And this Professor Ligoropoulos, Professor Francolau, and Professor Chamir. Thank you for continuing to be in the audit committee and also be advisors to the student section. So I wish the new board every success. Mr. Maunis, according to our bylaws, within the next 10 days, you have to convene all the 5 winners. And so that you can elect the members of all the various committees.
Last year before.
What about a big task?
Yes, I would like to say that in that meeting, we must have also the anachromaticus.
Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. Substitute members, right? The substitute members. In other words, all 8 winners should be actually present. Actually, because we had the same number of votes, it should be actually 9. We have to talk to Mr. Yanisopoulos and Mr. Pexit, who wants to be on the board, and the other one would be a substitute member.
Mr. Yanisopoulos.
We need actually 3 substitute members.
Yes, Mr. Yanisopoulos is in Olympia.
Right, the Baltic line. Right. He's a great athlete and supporter of the marathon and the sports events. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to ask Mr. Laranges for his lady of today to give this present to the speaker as a memento of the presentation.
Thank you very much. My team management will be a symposium. For those who don't know, we're planning and organizing right now a very important symposium immediately after the Post-Colonial Week on June 13th. We'll tackle the significance of shipbuilding and ship repairs for the growth of the Greek economy and what should be done to revive it. Those of us who have some knowledge in our profession, have experience to contribute, so we'll educate our politicians what we should do to help the economy with an industry that can use thousands of people instead of a small industry with 10 or 15 people. I just remind those in the audience that the golden years of Hellenic shipyards, when it was a private company, and the late Stavros Nerkos. The shipyard prior to 1981 had 6,700 people, and at least another 4,000 were working as subcontractors, suppliers, etc. So 11,000 families were earning their living from shipyard. And now it's almost closed. So we have to do the best we can, those of us who know, try and change this down for very significant industry, because they have a lot of advantages. So they should be very active in that field. And it can be done. June 13th, we will hear some of the secrets of success 30 years ago, but it can still be done today. So we need some patriots that can invest money and help in our country. But thank you very much. Have a good night. 16 years we worked in the New York City arena, working